Brandon, it's my favorite time of the week, and it seems like we get to do these literally every week right now. And as you say, business is booming because we're doing another flight night. We have a pretty cool guest, but first, how's life, man? Haven't seen you in like a week, so how you doing?
It's great. Can't complain. Busy as always, but you know, little one's growing up is just growing like a weed, and yeah, Keeneland's full kick, full season, so it's a good time. It's a good time right now.
Absolutely. And just wait, eventually that little one of yours will be doing what mine's doing, and we're going to dance competitions every weekend. It's fantastic. It's fantastic.
I mean, the only good side to that is that we'll be doing it together, so we'll have each other to hang out with.
That is true. I did say this weekend, I was like, man, it'd be really nice if all the other dads were out here so I could drink some bourbon with them instead of just sitting in the hotel room at 9 o'clock. So
Yeah,
I'm looking forward to
absolutely.
that.
Yeah,
Looking forward to that.
absolutely.
And let's welcome in our guest. He's the master whiskey taster at Rabbit Hole, and he's been doing this bourbon whiskey thing for a little while. He's seen all the craziness that's happening in the industry. Let's welcome in Matt Gandolfo.
Hey, y'all. I really appreciate you having me. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. We're excited to have you. Excited to have some of the pours from Rabbit Hole on. It's been a minute since we've had you guys on and tried some stuff. Obviously, you guys have quite a bit of new stuff coming out, and so we're excited to get tried.
Absolutely. And
Now,
Brandon, I love how you pipe in the kids in the background. It makes you very relatable for all the bourbon
Yep.
sipping dads out there. We're
Yeah.
all in this
Yeah.
together.
Yes, absolutely. Trust me, that's not by any intention, but I mean it is kind of like the Masters, how they funnel in the birds chirping and all that stuff. So
Exactly.
I think that's
Exactly.
just what I'm going to start doing, just funnel in
Uh,
some kids in the background. It's
I
fun.
feel I feel right at home right now. I understand.
Good,
Yeah,
good,
absolutely. Uh-huh.
absolutely. Yeah.
uh, now, before we get into you, Matt, shall we launch our first pour? Because we got three to get through tonight, and that is the Derringer, and I believe this is you have the normal as part of the core, but we've got the single barrel, I believe.
Yeah, yeah. I gave you all three different pours, and Dareringer Single Barrel is appropriate for a few reasons. I'm going to show off the official bottle here, just because our single barrel bottles have a little bit more of an elaborate look to it, a little bit more curated of a label there. But our single barrels are fun because it's how you get a cash strength option for our Rabbit Hole products. All the core products are 95 proof. The Derringer is the one that's 93. And, I like the cash strength option for our single barrel, and it's a little bit additional age on it. All our single barrels are right around 8 years old now, which is really mind blowing because when I first started at Rabbit Hole, the distillery wasn't even built yet. I was part of the initial distilling team, and I remember those original cooks thinking, "Oh my lord, I'm gonna have to wait forever for this
Yeah.
whiskey to be ready." And now we're getting to the point where we're getting legit age on our whiskey. And I know you mentioned that you had us on before, and a big thought process for us as we went through this journey was we wanted the consumer to be a part of the ride. So, our initial releases were only 3 years old, and that was intentional because we wanted that evolution to be transparent. We wanted, those consumers to try it at the 3-year-old version, knowing that it was going to continue to get age on it. And right now, as we're knocking on the door of 8, 9 years, it's exciting to see how that product has changed in the barrel and how different it is from the original releases.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, and this one's coming in at 104 proof, and the nose is fantastic. It's very, this is a good one. This is welcoming us into the rabbit hole and going down it. So I'm liking it.
From day one, honestly, Derringer has been the consumer choice. People just gravitate towards it. It's a wheated bourbon base, and that just interacts so well with finishing barrels. And we finish it in a PX sherry cask for anywhere from 3 to 6 months. That one in particular, we were playing around with a little bit. We wanted to see how long we can go in that sherry cask. So that one individually was in the finishing cask for 23 months. So definitely a little bit of a sherry bomb in there. I get a lot of raisin on it. Very approachable. It's one of those whiskeys that it's a rarity because I think it stands up with the traditionalists, but it's also approachable enough for someone who's just getting into the category. So we love showing off Dareringer, and it's a really good metaphor for the way we conduct business. Dareringer in itself, the names for all our products are what we call here Jabberwockies, which is a term from Alice in Wonderland, and obviously there's a rabbit hole vibe with Alice in Wonderland. And, it's bringing two words together that makes sense. And that's always been kind of a love story between Kaveh Zamanian and his wife. Kaveh Zamanian, of course, is our founder. And he fell in love with a girl from Louisville when he was in Chicago. And she pulled him back into the bluegrass state. And that's how the whole bourbon journey came. So just like Kaveh and his lovely wife, Heather, came together to make something beautiful, that's what our wheated bourbon and those PX sherry casks are doing. So it's we try to have a story behind everything. There's a thought process, the way we approach it, that bourbon needs to be fun, bourbon needs to be authentic, it needs to have a real story behind it, and I think Daringer's a good example of that.
Super tasty. Like, you're not kidding. Like, it's a one that is as approachable as you can find. And
almost get like you mentioned raisin, but you get that really depth of character from the single barrel, and you can really tell that it's got that deep, concentrated, baking spices. Get the fruit forward. It's kind of for me like almost like a holiday fruitcake almost for me.
No, I can see that.
Yeah, but I mean, extremely well done. I think it's very good. Like John said, the nose is fan. Nose gets better after each sip, honestly.
Yeah.
Like it's just got a different depth of something different. Like it goes a little deeper, a little stronger, a little more pungent. Which is,
and as it airs out, like you said, you do get different. You get different hints of flavors when you keep going back. And with it being a single barrel and a finishing product, you don't see finishing product single barrels very often. And we do get a pretty good variation in flavor profile from the different PX sherry cask, and it tends to be either fruit baking spice forward like this one, and there's some that just come out real buttery, and some people love that. It's almost like a butterscotch, like a movie theater popcorn type butter almost comes on. So it's always fun to go single barrel hunting, and if you find one you love, you gotta go right back to that same store. And the barrel program is something that we've been trying to put a lot more emphasis on and get excitement for the brand.
Absolutely.
I was gonna say this is a good one, and like you said, you're right. You don't see the finished single barrel. I don't, Brandon. I don't know if I've really ever see that ever. So that's something unique too, because depending on, like you said, where you're at in your bourbon journey.
Right.
That's a fun one to try to go down, because it would be something unique, and you don't get to see that a whole lot. Why'd you guys want to do that with this as a single barrel? I mean, I know this is one of your core groups, so to get that cash strength, but still, that's a unique step.
Yeah. Excuse me. Yeah, I think the thought process was when we first started making Dareringer, and we did see the variation from barrel to barrel before we made our blends. Blending at Rabbit Hole is such a challenge. We don't have the luxury of these monster tanks that our friends over the Heritage brands have. I came from Jim Beam and Wild Turkey, and that is a completely different operation. Our tanks literally won't hold more than 15 to 16 barrels. So blending is so important for us, because one bad barrel could spoil that whole batch. And so as we were approaching blending for Dareringer, we got some unbelievable blenders here. We were seeing that variation, and we thought it'd be a shame not to highlight that, to see the different flavor profiles. So in one way, the variation's great. In another way, the single barrel program has helped shine light on those blenders here, because they realize, hey, it's not all consistent. It's not just picking out 15, 16 random casks and throw them in a tank together. There is a lot of strategy that go into that, and I think it's such a lost art for our industry, especially the smaller distilleries that don't have the luxury of blending 1,000-barrel blends. We're a true small batch here, and there's a lot of there's a lot of love that goes into it, but there's a lot of frustrating days where you think you're locked in, and when we go to do a blind taste test for past references, sometimes it just doesn't work out the way you want. So we put a ton of intentionality into that, and we make sure it gets our team seal of approval before it hits the market.
That makes a ton of sense. And
so you mentioned your background. You come from Jim Beam and some other big players. How did you get into bourbon, whiskey, that world, and walk us through how you got into how that got started.
Well, I think we can all remember, being 22, 23 years old, coming out of college and wondering what the hell you want to do with your life. And, I was locked in with law school, actually. And I was accepted, and I was, so excited for it. And I said, I'm going to spend this summer before law school. I'm going to talk to some lawyers and see if they got any advice before I go in. And I probably talked to 12 lawyers, and not one of them was like, I think you should do this. I'm really happy I decided this career in law. So the lack of enthusiasm started to worry me a little bit. And this was, in 2008, 2009, this is when things were starting to heat up with bourbon. And I could see the momentum. I probably didn't realize how big it would get, but I thought it would be a wave that I could hop on and ride it and see where it took me. And I was I came on the Jim Beam as what they call a distillery ambassador, which was a glorified tour guide basically, and working mostly with distributors and the sales team, and that was during the Suntory acquisition. So a lot of tag team tours with the translator, and seeing how that process went down, which was honestly fascinating. And from there, it led me to a path to Wild Turkey, where I was national brand ambassador for 2.5 years, which basically I just followed Jimmy Russell around the country and got to see him do his thing, and which was really cool. Awesome. It was talking about anyone who's interested in bourbon, he's a presence from the past, and for me to hear stories about him and Elmer T. Lee and Booker No, and these titans, and to hear these casual stories one-on-one, it was so cool. And another thing, when you grow up in Kentucky, you take it for granted almost what this spirit means to the state. When you go out and you're introducing people in other states to bourbon for the first time, and you're seeing the way they respond to the stories, and they're seeing the way they respond to the charisma that Jimmy Russell has. I think that's his number one asset. He finds a great way to connect with people. Obviously, I realized, people. This is a beautiful thing that people really respond to, and I really enjoyed that side of it. I love the cultural tie for the state, and I was on the road probably 40 weeks out of the year, so I was getting a decent amount of Marriott points at that time, and then my wife gets pregnant, and I realize this is not a reality that we're going to be able to continue. And so I think to myself, what's my next step? And after talking so much about bourbon, after talking about the process, I think I had a realization that I didn't want to just talk the talk my whole career. I wanted to actually get my hands dirty. And at that time, Rabbit Hole has been announced, but they haven't broken ground yet. And their temporary office, if y'all have ever been to Louisville on Market Street, there's a coffee shop called Please and Thank You that's known for their chocolate chip cookies. And the temporary office for Rabbit Hole at that time was right above there. And I just made it a point once every couple of weeks to pop in on them and basically annoy the hell out of them and let them know, hey, I want to be a part of this. And thankfully, Cave gave me a chance to bring a marketing guy on to the initial distilling team. And the initial crew was basically 3-4 distillers, and for me to be a part of that before the distillery even opened and commission the opening of a distillery, and I couldn't think of a better way to learn how to make whiskey, and it was a perfect fit at that time. So I distilled here for 2.5 years, and I was the barrel warehouse manager and oversaw maturation for a few years before moving into my current role as master whiskey taster.
So please tell me that title is as cool as it sounds, and it is as literal as it sounds. Because if it is what it exactly what it says it is, then like, are you guys hiring? Because I mean, it sounds cool as hell. Just say taste whiskey.
That is, it's the number one comment I get, and people are definitely intrigued by what we do. And when Rabbit Hole was purchased by Pernod Ricard, everything kind of had to restructure, and along with that, Kaveh Zamanian went from being the founder of Rabbit Hole, where he held the office as chief whiskey officer for a couple years, which talk about awesome job titles. That was pretty great. And when he did that, he accumulated this team. It was myself, Jake Vollmer, who does a great job blending for Rabbit Hole, then Ali Ochoa, who's the master blender for Jefferson's. So, we had this Pernod Ricard family that we're synergizing with, and I was in a situation where I get to learn from these brilliant whiskey minds and absorb, all this knowledge, and it's exactly what you think it is. It's a lot of sensory evaluation, not only on the age side, but the distillate side as well. And a normal day is coming in here and having your morning tasting, taking a few hours to do some admin work. Right before lunch, we usually squeeze in some single barrel evaluating. So when we decide which barrels are going to be in the single barrel program, and then at the end of the day, we usually have one last innovation tasting, or we'll taste through some different finishing projects. And it definitely has changed my drinking habits outside of work. I'm not much of a social drinker anymore, as the last thing I want to do is pour a bourbon when I get home. But it's amazing how, from the very beginning to where I am now, how my palate evolves, and you realize how repetition really helps in this kind of field. And not only that, tasting with the right people, because there's no one definition for a great whiskey palate. Naturally, we're all going to taste different things out of that pour, and I think that's the number one thing that I've learned is there's always been a bit of pretentiousness in sensory evaluation. Like people see it from the wine side, and whiskey's not like that. It's basically so important to have a collaborative effort, because something that I pick up that I might be more sensitive to, the people I taste with taste something totally different. So I think the main thing is let's be honest about what's coming out. Let's talk things out, because there's plenty of times where something might taste off, but I don't see it in a bad way, where someone else might see that as there's a fault in that whiskey. There's something going on there. So, it's interesting that one man's trash could be another man's treasure. And I think the single barrel program is a great place to put some of those barrels, because, depending on what type of consumers come in to select the barrel, if you're a high volume off premise account, you're going to want something that's really agreeable. You're going to want something like Dareringer. But if you're a bourbon club coming in, you're going to want something that is going to be totally off the wall. If you're dealing with people who are buying 100 bottles a year, you want something that's going to be different and rare, and it's fun to be able to put good use to some of those barrels that I wouldn't say are flawed, but are just very, very different.
Right.
Well, and that's perfect. That is different that you talk about, because the next pour that we're going to try is definitely different. It's a 5 grain, which you don't hear a lot about, and it's got two different chocolate malts as part of this 5 grain, and that is the Race King, coming in at 95.5 or 95.5 proof. What can you tell us about this guy? Because I know it's a limited edition release, and it just came out.
Just came out a week from today, actually, and I got that bottle right here so y'all can get a peek of it. Matches more of our core bottle scheme. Race King, if you're someone who hangs out with me, you've been hearing about Race King for 6 months. I was sneaking sample bottles in the Commonwealth Stadium during UK football games, and this is something I've been super excited about, simply because when you travel around and you go to these different bourbon bars, the number one thing I'm trying to do when I go into 7 Grand in California, and name your bourbon bar, is I'm trying to find something that is a traditional bourbon but will surprise my palate, and this is exactly what Race King is. So I mentioned or you mentioned that there's two different chocolate malts in there: chocolate malted barley, chocolate malted wheat. That is only makes up 7% of the total mash bill, but that 7% makes an unbelievable impact, not only on the nose and the palate, but even when we are producing that product. You know, everyone that's seen that muted yellow mash color when traditional bourbon is being fermented, there's a rich brown color to it. You dip your finger in that mash, and it's like Cocoa Puffs at that point, and you just knew it was going to be something special. And you know, as you are tasting it, I
love Brandon's reaction.
I get those chocolate notes on the nose and the palate, obviously, but I also get like an espresso bean on it. You know, there's a there's a coffee shop feel to it that I really enjoy quite a bit, and this really kind of plays into Rabbit Hole's commitment to a couple things. You know, when you started distillery in 2018, how are you going to set yourself apart from these traditional bourbon distilleries? It's always been two things for us: unique mash bills, which is a 5-grain mash bill, the 2 chocolate malted grains, rye, malted rye, and corn, and then the finishing projects that we talked about with Dareringer. So, you know, we always knew we had to take big swings. We always knew we had to take risks, because when you start dealing with mash bills like this, no one's made a mash bill like this. So you don't know how it's going to interact in the barrel. I mean, we just could have made 100 barrels of something that we can't use at that point. It's not like you can blend that into anything. So, you know, I appreciate the ability to do something different. For so long in this industry, it was slightly different percentages of corn, rye, malted barley, or corn, wheat, malted barley, depending on what you're making. And from the get-go, we said, we're not going to play that game. You know, we're going to do something completely different. And I think it's really paid off well for us. And not only for Raceking, but some of our other traditional products like Cave Hill and High Gold. I think that is those unique mash bills are being set apart now that they're getting older, and people are getting excited about it more and more. Now we're getting to a legitimate age.
Yeah, this is something different. The nose is definitely like chocolate. It feels. I mean, you have like a Reese egg or something, coming off Easter, a couple laying around your house, and I'm like, man, that takes me right to that little late night snack that I have.
Yeah, we only released about 600 cases last week, and it's going to be distributed throughout the country. Right now, the only place you can get is right here at our distillery. So if anyone's listening, they're curious, we still got about 56 bottles left here at our distillery before we sell out, hopefully before Derby. But really, this is going to be an annual release. We want to space it out where every Derby season, we're saying, hey, we want to make this part of that Louisville racing tradition. We want people to know, if you want Raceking, you better be ready to go 2 weeks before post time. And I'm excited about that. Obviously, the Raceking name ties into that racing spirit, and being from Louisville, I know how special these 2 weeks are to the city. So hopefully that's an additive to the celebration everyone's diving into right now.
Brandon, what was that reaction? Because I feel like you were thinking it was going left, and I think it went right, or vice versa.
It went hard right. But in a good way, because you like you said, it's very different, very unique. You guys took a big chance, took a big risk, took a big swing, and normally when you see double chocolate malt, you're just like, okay. Most of the time, you don't really taste anything chocolatey. You may get something a little funky in there, but you can't really pinpoint it, pick it out. That, like, as soon as it hit the back, I was like, oh, wait a minute. I wasn't expecting that deep, dark chocolate, espresso, like you said, taste. And it wasn't like it's not like it's just a coffee chocolate bomb. It's not. It's like you get bourbon, whiskey, oh, wait a minute. I just took a shot of espresso, had a dark chocolate candy, and then it finishes smooth with the bourbon whiskey, finish.
It's a roller coaster.
It is a roller coaster, but it's in a roller coaster in a fantastic way that I was not expecting. That's why my reaction was what it was. I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah,
this is serious.
I agree with you. And in addition to those chocolate and espresso beans, like, I'm always looking for tobacco or leather.
Yeah.
You know, there's a richness and complexity in there that you know, I go from, oh, this is going to be fun to play around with and do espresso martinis with this in there, to, oh, this is the perfect cigar sipping bourbon when you're at the track. So it's fun to play around with. And like I said, what I'm looking for mostly as a consumer when I'm going in is something that's going to be different, something that I haven't explored before. And I think that definitely fits the bill there.
Absolutely.
Now, what made you guys decide to do chocolate malt? To begin with, a chocolate malt. I've heard of a few. I know. I can't think. Oh man, Kentucky Artisan. Jade. I know they do some of that up there, and he's done that with Trackside and things like that. But to do two different chocolate malts, how did you end up there? Like, I mean, that feels like you guys were like, how can we have some fun with this?
Yeah, no, and I think that's the number one word right there is let's have fun. And it's always exciting cooking a new mash bill. And I remember specifically this day when we first transferred this cook over to a fermentation tank, and we saw that color, and the aroma just filled our fermentation room. And I think at that point we were all very hopeful it was going to be something special. But you know, it goes back to that commitment to unique mash bills. So we work very closely with different malted grain suppliers, and you know, they'll bring in varieties of not only chocolate malt but honey malt, and that's where we got the malted rye aspect of it. And you know, we can see in the raw grain, it's hard to translate it to the final product, but we can see potential in the raw grain. So you know, knowing that, it goes back to, hey, this could be something that's very interesting. Now, sometimes we do that, it doesn't work out very well for us, but, you know, knock on wood, for the most part, we have been locked in pretty good on how this is going to translate from grain to glass. And, you know, it's all about taking those risks, and the bold, you know, fortune favors the bold, basically. So we knew not many people were messing around with chocolate malt. Shout out to Jade over at Kentucky Artisan, great guy. We were at the Kentucky Distillers Association Leadership Academy together, and it's such a great resource to be able to talk shop with people and see what other people are doing. And I think it's a great example of camaraderie in our industry, and it's cool that everyone can approach the same grain but doing it in such different ways. You know, I see that in finishing as well. You know, we have an Amberana that's one of my favorite things that we do, and a lot of people are doing Amberana right now, and they are all extremely different. So it's fun to see how we can all kind of go down the same lane and come out with vastly different final products.
Absolutely. I'm liking this one.
No, it's fantastic. You could sip on this, pair it with some chocolate-covered espresso beans, and call it a day. Sit by a campfire or whatever you want to do, but put it in a cocktail. You know, make an espresso martini with this. Is what I would do.
Yeah. And we've always used our distillery gift shop as kind of a testing ground for our products, and you know, we've been super happy with the response from people. You know, they've been coming in and gobbling it up, and that makes me feel very optimistic that this is about to go out to different markets across the country. I think we're going to get a lot of momentum and enthusiasm, which is important because it's the first year we've done this release. It's a 6-year product, and I'm looking forward to next year already to see if that momentum carries over and people are excited for the release in 2027.
Well, it's like you said, it's so unique, and for y'all, that, like you said, you love doing that. You know, Cave Hill's a 4-grain. You know, you guys have always kind of dabbled left of center, right of center, however you want to talk about it. How do y'all, you know, obviously it takes some, as Brandon said, scared money don't make money. That's one of his favorite sayings, but there also has to be a process to scale up. You know, like when you're trying these things, how does that work? Because like you said, you don't know. And unfortunately with bourbon, it's time. And what's crazy is at year 5, it could be god awful. And year 6, it turned into something beautiful. Like what's that process like, and how hard is it to be patient and to just go with it all?
No, I think it's a really good question, and so much is about risk taking, obviously, because you don't know what the final product's going to be, and you don't want to be in a situation where you make 20 barrels of something and you're not quite sure, and it turns out awesome, and you don't have anything to back it up with because there's been such a gap between your cooks with it. So, there's a level of commitment on an annual basis, and that's why we are limited to 600 cases every year, because it was such a limited production yield of it. And I think Rabbit Hole in itself is almost the perfect distillery for trying new mash bills, and if it works, we're able to scale it up pretty easily, because we're a top 20 whiskey producer in the country, so we're not some small craft distillery, but we are way behind some of the mass production distilleries in Kentucky. Like the Boston plant and for Jim Beam and Heaven Hill. Their production is way more than us. On the ideal day here at Rabbit Hole, we can burn through 4 fermenters and produce, depending on the mash bill, 85 to 90 barrels of bourbon. So I think the main thing is we can do one cook of something, produce 20 barrels of it, see if it works, and if it does work and we see the momentum, well, we're able to scale up pretty easily on site here. And most distilleries in Kentucky, there is such an emphasis on efficiency, and we're all running a business. I get it. We got to look out stuff like that, but that's one of the things that drew me to Rabbit Hole the most, where the mindset has always been, let's make sure we invest in the right things. And I think not being too worried about just running 1 or 2 mash bills at any given time, when you put in all the mash bills that Rabbit Hole makes, and then a couple contracts that we have, we're producing 7 or 8 different mash bills at any given time, which is very rare for a distillery. Most people want to make that one mash bill, produce it for 10 months out of the year, maybe sprinkle in a high rye or a couple of weeks of rye whiskey, and that's it. We are constantly crafting this elaborate mash calendar, and I think that shows a lot of flexibility, especially in this current state of bourbon, where there's a lot of whiskey sitting in the warehouse right now. So this is a perfect time for us to use this as an opportunity to incubate new mash bills, new things that we're doing. So we're trying to be creative at this point, because we got plenty of whiskey stashed away. So what could be that next project? What could be that next Race King that excites people?
I love that. Love it.
Yeah, it's so different. It's so good. I'm gonna have to get my hands on the bottle of that one for sure. 100%.
Cool.
So
now the names you talk about, Race King.
Mm-hmm.
That's obviously makes a ton of. Brandon, you want to go with this one?
Go ahead. Go ahead. No, you just took my thought process. Go ahead.
Because obviously we're heading into Derby season, so Race King makes sense. You've got Dareringer that we just tried a little bit ago. You got Cave Hill. You got other ones. I feel like like you said, there's a story behind everything. So how does the naming process work, and how much fun is that? Because I feel like that could be just as much fun as it is making the bourbon. Coming up with a name could be a lot of fun too.
No, and I will say, between just us 3 right here, it could, on an ops perspective, it could be so you're pulling your hair out, because you can never remember what name marketing came up with, and trying to piece that together, and it leads us to having like nicknames for the actual names. Like High Gold was the first cook we did with malted rye in it, so our recipe code was MRB, malted rye bourbon, but we were also all calling it Mr. Bourbon from day one. So it's like we have our own ops language with some of this stuff, but it goes back to that fun concept. I think it's been a really nice benefit. Cave was born in Iran. All right, he moved to California. He grew up there. Was in Chicago. Was in New York. He was in these big cities, and I think that works to our benefit, because when you grow up in Kentucky, it really, there's such a big emphasis on what your granddad did and what his dad did, and there's a traditional aspect that we all hold near and dear. I love that traditional aspect, but Cave innately came with a different perspective, and it was led by not only making great whiskey and you know, making sure we're investing in those decisions, but hey, if we're not having fun while doing this, what are we doing? And I think you know, you can see that there's been a series of derby parties in the past that have been some of the best parties I've ever been to. You know, we rarely miss out on an opportunity to celebrate something in a unique way, and I think the names really stick out for that as well. And you know, when I first started here, we first started making whiskey, those names weren't even conceived yet. It was just the black label and the blue label, and we knew right away, like, we needed to give these products an identity. So Cave Hill is the one you'll see in the black label. Anyone who grew up in Louisville probably knows of Cave Hill Cemetery, and that's the final resting place for a lot of Kentucky's most favorite sons and daughters, like Muhammad Ali and Colonel Sanders. But how it pertains to us is there's so many past distillers from that old Whiskey Row era in Louisville, and that's their final resting place. And it's really very much a nod to that tradition we just spoke of as we put a new twist on things. And you know, my father and my grandfather, they had a business downtown, so I was in downtown Louisville a lot as a kid. And to see where it's at now compared to where it was before, and you have one thing to think, and that's bourbon. I mean, Louisville, Kentucky is a tourist destination all of a sudden. Like, that is unbelievable for me to even think about. So it's been really cool to be a part of that identity, and Cave Hill gives us a platform to tell those stories and you know, make sure they know that Louisville has such a rich whiskey tradition that went away for a little bit and is now rushing back, and it's very exciting. High Gold is another one we talked about. That's probably my favorite name story, because when I first started here, you know how Notre Dame has that "Play Like a Champion Today" sign? Well, we had something in our distillery lab that always resonated with me, and it said, "Manufacturing is repetitive, but creation is personal." And I remember just that being embedded in my mind, where we're not trying to mass produce something here. We're trying to do something special. From the get-go, we're trying to be that next great American whiskey, has always been the ambition for us. And High Gold really comes from that craftsmanship we are trying to tap into. Christian High Gold was a stonemason from the turn of the century, from the 1800s to the 1900s, who has a huge impact in the city of Louisville. And the High Gold House is down on River Road. If you're ever driving down from downtown to the East End, there's this facade there that's his old house, one of his first projects. And it really ties into the identity of the city once again. You know, Louisville in itself, and I felt this when I was at Jim Beam and Wild Turkey, I was always a bit of an outsider because I was that Louisville kid. You know, I wasn't from Bardstown. You know, I wasn't from Lawrenceburg. And so, you know, the fact that Rabbit Hole's here now, and I'm in a place where I'm 10 minutes away from home, it's so special to be a part of this renaissance of bourbon in the city of Louisville.
Yeah, no, I love it, and people don't realize that. Like you said, people don't realize how much history Louisville has. You know, when it comes to you know, the bourbon heritage, the things that were there that started there. You know, you got Whiskey Row, you got all that stuff, whatever. But a lot of people just don't realize it. They don't associate Louisville as much as they do the other areas, the Bardstowns and all that stuff. But no, man. But for me, I'm excited to try the next one, because I'm pretty sure John is too, because we're really, 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 really big rye fans.
That's great.
But I'm excited to try this one. This is the Boxergrail Rye. Is that right?
Yeah, it's another
Full
single
name?
barrel. Yeah. Boxergrail, another Jabberwocky, to kind of tie into that fighting spirit of Louisville and the boxing history here. So, you know, I picked this one out specifically because that's my favorite thing that we make. I love it. And, you know, coming from a world of...
You're one of us. You're one of us.
Yeah, exactly. Well, you know, I'm surprised to hear y'all say that, because a lot of Kentuckians, you know, rye could be a 4-letter word around here. And, you know, I think it's picking up more momentum where people are starting to see what rye's done right. I think we all grew up for so long, the vast majority of rye was made out of one location. So you were getting this universal flavor profile, and it was a little more peppery than what you see today. And
Correct.
I think this is a rye to convert people who think they don't like rye whiskey into loving it, because our rye, it has that 95.5 traditional rye whiskey mash bill. And the reason we did that is because Larry Ebersol, he's known as the godfather of rye. He helped train all our distillers, so it's very much that mash bill is a nod to him and the time he spent with us. And we had 3 weeks with Larry to soak in as much knowledge as possible. And I think this is a really cool indicator of, even though this is the same mash bill, it is far more herbaceous. It has these licorice notes that I pick up. I get a little bit of dill. Certain barrels, not so much this one, but I get a touch of spearmint in there. There's just so much complexity to our rye whiskey, and people ask, if why is it so different than most other ryes, especially if it's the same mash bill. And I think that ties into our barrel selection. For one, we get all our barrels from Kelvin Cooperage. We do a very poor job of bragging about this, because everyone's talking about toasted barrels. We don't brag about it because we've never used anything different than toasted barrels. Literally every product that Rabbit Hole has made has been in a toasted barrel, level 3 char. And Kelvin Cooperage, if you're not familiar with them, it's like a blast from the past. ISC does such an unbelievable job, and I've been to that Cooperage a number of times, and great people there. And just like how bourbon needs these big distilleries that are keeping the industry afloat, ISC is that version of the Cooperage business, where Kelvin really matches well with what we are. A little bit more boutique-y, very old school there. All our barrels are charred by wood stoked fires instead of gas in there, which I think makes a flavor profile difference. So I think from the get-go, the barrels play into this unique flavor profile that the Boxergrail has. And I also think, and of course I had such a hand in our maturation warehouses in Henry County, they are one-of-a-kind warehouses. They are traditional rick houses, but it's a metal frame, metal ricks, and it sits on a concrete slab. So we don't have anywhere for that moisture to go. Once that angel share evaporates out and drops to the ground, usually when you go to a traditional rick house, there's dirt floors that absorbs that. We have that condensation hits the pad, and I think that has something to do with the unique flavor profiles our products have. I also think we don't get a traditional temperature cycle that you see in those wooden rick houses, because that metal holds that chill for so long. You walk into one of our warehouses in early April when it hasn't been below 30 degrees in the last month, but it still has that chill in there. There's all that metal, it keeps that temperature more consistent, so we don't get these crazy rapid fluctuations. It's more of a gradual flow through the seasons, which plays a huge role in what we're doing.
This is different, and that's not, and as Brandon and I will say, not in a bad way. It's like you said, it is. Brandon and I love rye as our go-to. We love a high rye bourbon. We love rye whiskey. And I know for those out there, we've talked about this a lot, it's not the easiest thing to make. It's a lot slower on the stills. It's everything just, it's a tougher one. But like you said, the 95.5 is what, if you do love a rye, that's the traditional one that everyone talks about. But to your point, in Indiana, it's one way. Out in Owensboro, it's another way.
Yeah.
And for you all, I'm getting like spearmint type, mintiness in there, and it is. Yeah. I don't know if I've ever gotten something like that off of one of these, and it's throwing me like, I'm like, wait a minute, I've never had this. This is so if you're a rye lover out there, this is something completely different than I feel like you would have normally had on a 95.5. This is super unique.
Yeah, I totally agree.
Yeah,
I think you hit the nail on the head too with the challenge of producing rye in the first place. I mean, it's so gummy. It's so hard to transfer. It's so hard to run through the still. And there was so much to think about. And the very first rye cook I did, I remember being so concerned about it not caking up on me in the cooker and making sure it hits the right transfer temperature. And I was filling up my very first rye cook into a fermentation tank, and I was just watching it, and I was so diligent. And I remember thinking to myself, it doesn't seem to be filling up very fast. And I forgot to close the valve at the bottom of the tank. So I was waiting for this to fill up, and then half that cook was just flowing onto the ground. And I remember thinking, oh my God, I've been making whiskey for a month. I'm gonna lose my job. And thankfully everyone had a okay mindset with it. But I remember thinking this is gonna be the most exclusive rye cook we've ever had, because it probably made like 6 barrels. And that was my baptism into being a distiller. Everyone has one mistake, and that was mine right there.
Should have
That's
bottled
the
it.
worst you ever did.
Should have bottled it. Baptism rye. That's all you have to do.
Right? Yeah, well, that'll be a special release here soon. Baptism rye. I like that. Very good.
You get 2 bottles out of that barrel.
Yeah, exactly. People love it. That's for sure. But sometimes, as you all know, you're no stranger to whiskey. Sometimes. The best products come from mistakes, and I remember the Forgiven product when I was at Wild Turkey, where this poor processing tech accidentally dumped a bunch of rye whiskey on top of a bourbon blend, and them being up in arms about it, then trying to be like, you know what, this is pretty good. So you never know what mistake is going to lead to a special product for sure.
Most of our famous, tastiest things in life has come from an accident,
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
but this right here it's funky in a good way. It's a funky roller coaster.
Yeah.
But in a good way for me, honestly. Like some people say funky, and it's just like, it's not very good. I don't think that, because every sip that I've taken, I let it. So when we started the show, I poured this in a glass and just let it just get air, right? And first sip, second sip, third sip, fourth sip is completely different for me.
Mm-hmm.
And like John said, it's like one sip I got the spearmint, the mint, and then followed with a little bit of pepper, and then on the last sip I got like some hints of kind of crazy, but I kind of got some like some brown sugar mixed with some pepper, just kind of like that spirit. It's just, I don't know, it's all over the place, but it's fun, and it's very good. Like I like it a lot. It's one of those things you can just pour, all day long and just have a fun time with it. You know what I mean?
And Matt, to your point earlier, as Brandon was talking through that, we have some friends that, for us, rye, for me and Brandon, it is like sweet, and we just love it. But for others, you get that pepper, and you get all of that, and it's not. I don't feel like on this one you get that heavy hint of that heat and pepper, which, to your point about being like an approachable rye, I can see some folks. This could be a good introductory rye, because it's not going to be like a lot of the other ones in the sense of you get the heat or depending on how your palate is, but like you get some softer notes, and different notes, and it's like, I'm like, okay, I'm digging
this could almost be, you could almost rename this as a cigar blend in my mind, because it's just like there's so many things.
A cigar rye. Yeah, like there's just so many different flavors, just like when you're smoking a cigar. Like you start on the front, you get to the middle third, middle back end. You get so many complexities of flavor throughout the cigar smoke. This is what that reminds me of, 100%.
No, I can totally see that, and I'm a huge fan of traditional rye whiskeys as well, and especially my time at Wild Turkey, I'm a huge fan of the 101 rye. I think it's awesome. But you were getting consistent, huge bursts of spice on there, and it was, it was not abrupt in a bad way, but it was always kind of a punch to the palate. Where this is, to your point, much more complex and much more. There's some subtleties that you could pick out more and more, and That one's still barrel proof. I don't know what the exact proof, if you know, John, there, but it was still a barrel proof product, and you still can pick out those complexities where usually you can't do that as much unless you have an 80 proof rye.
Well, that was what I was going to say too. It's 98.2, and it's right in the perfect wheelhouse for us. And you couldn't tell me that's 98.2. That there is no Kentucky hug down the chest. Now, granted, I know we've had a few pours by this point, but like that is.
I mean, you only get the spice. You only get the spice for me, like the really peppery spice, just on the very front. Yeah. But then on the whole middle, back, all the way down, like you don't get anything. Like it's just super smooth.
I think that 98 proof proof point, I think it really tells a story of what I was saying about the warehouses too, because I can tell you right now that had to be on the bottom floor of the warehouse that sometimes is seen as an inferior location, but for us it has produced some of the most unique products we got because of that concrete slab I was talking about. We got a rickhouse full of different mash bills that the angel shares floating out into the heavens, and when that temperature shifts at night, drops back down to the floor, and it absorbs into those bottom floor barrels in such a unique way. We fill all our barrels up at 110 proof, and for that one to be coming out at 98 proof shows you the impact of that liquid on the bottom floor. And I think I always like to brag about this as well, because the legal maximum to fill a barrel of bourbon was 125 proof, and the reason we don't do that is because we want to fill it 110 to add far less water on the back end. If we add that water on the front end, financially it's a nightmare, because that means we're using more barrels, we're putting more liquid away, we're basically storing water, which people see as a negative, but we take that hit on the price because we know a superior product's going to come out on the back end, and I think what you're sipping on right now is a perfect example of that.
You took the words right out of my mouth, because I love that, and that's one of the things that Brandon and I feel like as we've gotten to do this more is learning more about the lower entry proof points, because one, like you said, you're not watering something down. It's not changing it drastically out of the barrel, which is awesome. And I also want to ask, for those that are going to go visit Rabbit Hole in NuLu, what can they expect? Because also you got a pretty cool spot there with the Overlook Bar.
Yep, no doubt. And I don't say it lightly. What you can expect when you come in here is the absolute gold standard, and that's not just me saying it. 5 years in a row, the World Travel News has voted us the best bourbon tour in America. So if you want something that is a unique experience, there's so many beautiful distilleries in Kentucky. There's so many great experiences you can go into. There's nothing like Rabbit Hole just because of our urban setting, our intentionality for aesthetics. If you are a bourbon lover, you'll love it here. But if you're someone that doesn't love bourbon, just love architecture, you will love it here. There's so many intentional decisions on the design of this building and how they tie into the operation. If you are an art lover, you're going to love it here, because Cave has curated some really cool pieces of art throughout the Overlook. And for those of y'all who don't know, the Overlook is our bar that sits at the top floor of our distillery. Great city views of downtown Louisville, a great place for a cocktail. Tours are running from 10 to, I think the last one goes out at 4:30. Bar closes down at 6. I've been begging them to stay open a little bit longer for people to grab a drink after work, but it is an ideal place to grab a cocktail. And if you're visiting Louisville, the NuLu neighborhood is a great place to walk around, enjoy shops and restaurants. So the location is ideal for anyone visiting to pop in. And that's our location is such a benefit for us, because we get the people who plan for 6 months the Bourbon Trail trips, and they make us a part of their journey. But we also get the people who came to Louisville for work and they stumble across something, and we're able to give them this mind-blowing experience that offers them a unique Kentucky trip they didn't expect, probably.
Man, I love it. Flex on them. Flex.
Yeah, I'm trying. Yeah.
Also, that Overlook Bar, the Overlook Bar. Oh, love it. Love it.
You do this long enough, and you realize there are so many distilleries that make world-class whiskey in the States. So how are you going to set yourself apart? You know, how are you going to come into this industry as an outsider like Cave, and within, you know, we opened up in 2018. Cave's already been nominated to the Bourbon Hall of Fame. If that isn't a seal of approval from the industry, I don't know what is. You know, that is an unbelievable feat for him to be adopted into what this means to Kentuckians. And kudos to the current version of those Titans we were talking about, the Bill Samuels who are always there, Wally Dant. You know, there's these people who Cave has built these relationships with that have very much been a good resource as he's gone down this road. And obviously it's paid off very well for him. And, you know, right now is where we're starting to get the dividends back, because for so long we were having those 3-year-old products, the 4-year-old, 5-year-old products. We are getting to a point where we're getting legitimate age statement on our product now, and the final product is unbelievable. And we don't know when we are gonna, you know, when we're gonna stop this journey. We're gonna keep floating up. We're gonna keep getting that age statement, but y'all know as well as I do, you can overdo it as well, especially in this state. You know, some people, they think that sweet spot is 6 to 10 years old. They don't want to think past 10 years old. So we're trying to see how these unique mash bills interact with the barrel for a certain duration and a certain place in the rick house as well. I mean, I remember vividly being at Jim Beam and hearing these old timers who've been working the rick houses for 40 years saying, hey, the best whiskey sits on the southeast corner of Warehouse E or whatever. And that's what we're trying to figure out now. We're trying to figure out how these different mash bills interact in different locations and different warehouses. And that doesn't happen overnight, but as we are honing in on the personalities of these rick houses, I think we're honing in on the blends. I think we're honing in on how the age has evolved the final product so well. And I am so excited for the future here to see how enthusiasts and just people who enjoy good whiskey respond to it.
And that is one thing that John and I, we kind of like hang our hat on. Like we love the traditional stuff. We love all that stuff, whatever. Like, you know, you can go back as far as you want, make it traditional as you want. But at some point, the new players to the game has to come into town. They got to figure out a way how to make it different. Okay. Yep. You know, Buffalo Trace did it this way. Elmer T did it this way. Jimmy Russell did it this way. Whoever, they did it all same mash bill. They put it in the same rick houses, up, down, whatever, sideways, northeast, whatever.
Yep.
But some folks have to come in and say, okay, there's more than one way to do this, and it's the future of distilling bourbon, aging bourbon, and that's what John and I, we hang our hat on. We're excited about it because we love seeing new ways to do it. I want to see new ways to do it because everybody loves the old number one fastball right down the middle. Everybody does. Mm-hmm. But at some point, you know, it's like, okay, you know, especially for the bourbon industry to grow and evolve, you got to do something different because everybody can do the same thing, the same mash bill, same distilling, whatever.
70, 24, 6.
Yeah. So, and that's what's cool about you guys. That's what's cool about, you know, anybody else that's trying to do anything different. It's like trying to break in, settle in, and obviously you guys have done more than break in. So, but you mentioned the future. Anything you can tell us on air coming next? Any future releases, products that folks could get excited about that you can talk about? So,
you know,
not,
I think
we can talk about off air.
I won't. I'll keep a few secrets, but there's some things we can talk about. You know, we're about to do our second release of a product we call Amrulé, which we partner with a maple syrup factory up in Canada. So what we have done is we dumped some Cave Hill barrels, and we've shipped those up to the maple syrup factory up there in Canada, and they've aged their syrup in there for 9-10 months, and then they send that back, and we use those as finishing barrels. And I think that is a really fun product because it's, you know, everyone's heard of different maple versions of bourbon with add the flavoring, But when you actually use the barrel, don't add any flavoring. It's more subtle. It's less artificial tasting. It's not that confectionery sugar. It's true maple syrup that's soaked into the whiskey. I think it's very unique, and that should be ready for a fall release going into the wintertime. Fun holiday pour. We had a meeting today, and it was brought up that our Founders Collection coming up is going to be in the next year our 10-year-old Cave Hill. So some of the first Cave Hill barrels that we ever produced, which going back to what I was saying before, thinking back on 2018 when I was figuring this all out and making these barrels, thinking, God, this is going to take forever. It makes me feel very old to think our 10-year-old product is only a couple of years away. So we're already planning that release. And going back into the theme of happy accidents, something that we're going to be coming out in the next year is, we call it Boo Rye. I mentioned that Forgiven story with Wild Turkey and the finished product, then blending the rye and the bourbon together on the back end. Well, he's going to hate me for calling him out like this because this is his mistake. But our head of operations, Cameron Talley, our fearless leader on the ops side, during that time when he's teaching these ragtag distillers the way, he slipped up and dumped some rye distillate on top of the bourbon distillate. And I haven't heard of anyone doing this before. We rolled with it. We threw it in the barrels. And I tell you what, we've been tasting it through the years, and it's going to be a fun release that we have coming out. So if you want something very unique, something that I promise you we will never do again, that'll be a fun one to keep an eye out for. So, all our gift shop here is once again a great testing lab for us. So we'll try the stuff like that. We'll only release in our gift shop. We have our distillery series where we took our rye whiskey and we finished it in a sweet vermouth cask. Starlino is what we call it, because Hotel Starlino is the vermouth. And we played around with it. We loved it. We sold it in the gift shop. It went well, and sure enough, some folks from Sweden came through and they tried it. Like, we got to get this. And we sent a pallet out to Sweden. So you never know who's walking through the door. You never know what's going to work for certain people. So we try, all our distillery series are in 375 milliliter bottles. So we try to do a downscaled version of these releases, see what works organically, and then, as we talked about before, upscale it. So we'll have a few things coming up around the corner that we're looking forward to.
Yeah.
Love it.
I'm excited. I'm excited for it.
Also, I just want to say, Gandalf the White is coming through with some very great things.
I appreciate that.
I had to get the joke. I had to get the
I know.
joke.
I appreciate it. That's the first time I've heard that. I told you, Jonathan, Brandon, you might not have hopped on yet, but don't hesitate to reach out. We want you all to come in and soak in what we're talking about at the distillery. So, anytime, I want you all to come, and I'll show you all around. And, and any listener out there, extending the same invite. We want to show off what we're doing. This whole distillery was designed to be transparent. We don't want to hold back any secrets because, quite frankly, everything we do is about making the best whiskey possible. And it's so nice to be able to work for a brand that has that thought process. We're so proud of what we're doing here. Real people are making our whiskey. We're a tight-knit team that have been doing it for so long together, and I can't imagine a better place to produce the spirit that we make.
I don't know how to finish that. That's just perfect. So
that's what I was gonna say. You literally took the words right out of my mouth. I was like, that seems perfect.
Absolutely.
And I love that. And Matt, thank you for taking us through the journey of Rabbit Hole, of you in the industry, but also Rabbit Hole and the uniqueness that they do. And Matt, Brandon, cheers, y'all.
Cheers. Appreciate it. Yeah.
Appreciate y'all's time. Have a good one, y'all.
You too.
See ya.